Sex. It's not that deep. Everything love, lust, and life.
Sex. We talk about it so you can get better at it. We can all get better at it and maybe feel a bit happier in the process. It's not that deep. Or is it?
Hi, welcome to this episode of Sex Is Not That Deep. This is Sex Short on how this podcast has changed our lives. And we thought we'd just do a quick sort of summary. Now we are a number of episodes deep of how it's changed us talking about things and learning about things. And it really has made a difference, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think a big part for me has been understanding the research. That's obviously quite a key role for me, is finding the stats and the research and all of that info. And I've done so much learning in my own personal sex journey, from things like learning that it takes up to 45 minutes for a woman to be aroused enough for her to actually be able to receive a penis, for example, or the importance of communication and the importance of talking about where and when and how, and what the statistics say about that have really changed my approach to things, and I think it's been really healthy.
It's really changed us as well. We've been surprised by a lot of the stuff that you've brought to us, and then we've gone and taken it and used it in our sex lives as well, and it's definitely changed the way we approach things.
I think one of the stats.
Yeah, we are, and that's a good thing.
One of the underlying things that we always refer back to is how important it is to talk about sex. And I think I've been surprised actually at how revolutionary that's been, because we've always been really open about it and we've talked about it together, but never as much as we have now. And it has had such a benefit on understanding each other, things that we've done and experienced since then. And I think for me personally as well, I've talked before about how men generally don't talk about sex together in between each other. It doesn't happen. And so it's been maybe a slightly bigger hurdle for me to jump to talk openly. And you look at some of our clips out on TikTok that have reached tens of thousands of people. We've obviously the episodes going out on the podcast, lots of people are listening to that. And at first it was quite a big mental hurdle for me to jump, was to talk about things openly. But now I feel so much better and more confident and enjoy talking about it so much.
I think it just goes to show that you can't talk about it too much. I mean, we thought that we were open and that we talked about it, but actually there's still room for more. And the more you do it, the better things get as well.
I think there's been a lot of learning and unlearning for all of us in this process, and ownership of a lot of stuff as well. Like for me, realizing that I wasn't thinking about my partners, I was thinking about myself and my own sexual needs, rather than being like, they actually don't want to have sex right now and it's nothing to do with me. And understanding that has been, I think, so helpful in my own personal journey, even, with sex and outside of sex, in my relationships as well.
And knowing where you're doing things wrong as well. Not necessarily wrong, because nothing is technically wrong in sex, but where you could be doing things better. And changing things up in ways that make things better. I didn't really realise until we'd done this quite how binary focused on orgasm I am. I'm like, that's where I'm going, that's what I'm doing. And we start sort of creating these little boxes that our sex ends up in, and that's the route to getting bored with it, isn't it? And this has really shown me what we can actually add in, and how many interesting things there are out there that they're just yet to try. Again, going back to the food analogy, since it's my thing, that you're just eating one little type of food, but there's a whole, there's so many countries with so many different things that there's a lot more to try.
Yeah, and that sort of covers everything from sort of sex toys to different approaches to initiating sex to, it's just endless, how much stuff we've covered, and how much we have been educated on new things, and on how different people have different reactions to things as well. And I think TikTok's been quite interesting, hearing the comments of people who aren't us and hearing their feedback and then being like, oh yeah, same, I feel this way, or having their own like, oh no, this isn't how I feel. It's just so interesting to hear and get people talking about it.
I think that's really important because like you see things your own way, but there's so many other viewpoints, and you just don't know what they are until they pop up. And I really like that. I really like seeing other people's viewpoints, and they don't have to meld with our own. We're not the gurus. We're just normal people.
Yeah.
And we might be wrong. We might be even not wrong. We might just have a different viewpoint because of where we've come from. But that might not mean that that's the best viewpoint, or that that's the viewpoint that is necessarily perfect for everyone. And that I like that sort of dialogue happening. And being able to see that dialogue.
Andy, you were saying before about how talking about things and knowing that people that you know could see things was at first quite a big hurdle for you. And how do you feel about that now?
I think it's like anything, with time and getting used to it can start to become the norm. I think I look at the impact it's had on us. So, yes, we're doing this podcast to put it out there in front of lots of people. But when I just focus on me and you, Fran, there's been so many things. And you said about we talked about initiation in an episode, and it made us realise, didn't we, actually, that we've probably not as good at that as we could be at the minute. And we've sort of gone one way with who initiates sex and who doesn't. And so it's been a good point of reflection for us to think about that and start making some changes to do that a little bit differently. But I think that's just made it easier to talk about. And, you know, I've had feedback I've had some close friends that have listened to the podcast, and they still don't want to talk about it themselves. But, yeah, the feedback's been really interesting. And from people we know as a couple as well, people who have listened to it, and they've said like they've really enjoyed the fact that we are normal people. Like you say, we're not gurus and we're not pretending to be. No. And I think that's resonating with a lot of people, that just talking normally about it and I think can be really powerful.
Even if people aren't necessarily coming on the podcast or even talking about it themselves, just listening as well is half of the battle. Which is if we do anything but that I mean, if that gives people another viewpoint and maybe enough question to look at their own lives and be like, well, maybe they can make positive changes too.
Yeah, and I think for me, realising how big of an effect this sort of almost movement of talking about sex can have on everybody has like turned this for me into, rather than just sort of being something that we had to do, as being something I feel so passionately about now, in that I just want to talk to everybody about sex now that I see like
we have started talking to everybody about it as well. I mean, I had a conversation with my mum about sex the other day, and we do not have that kind of relationship normally. And it wasn't directly about our sex, but she brought in viewpoints, and I was like, oh yeah, and we are on the same page about things, and that's interesting, and things like that I just wouldn't think about. And it's not the sort of person I would generally be talking to, because, you know, she's not in my age range. She's not come to it from the same sort of viewpoint as me. She's very definitely a different kind of person, but the views are similar in many ways, and that's nice to see, and to be able to talk about it with someone like that as well.
And it's just like about normalizing that conversation, and it's okay to talk about sex. Not even that it's just okay. It's good for your health to talk about sex, as we've sort of found out. It's good for your relationships. It's good for your general state of mind and confidence and well-being. You look younger if you talk about sex. There's just so many benefits to it that we didn't know. So it's great that it's
definitely changed our relationship. We definitely have better sex as a result of this. And even in a short space of time. Do you think it's changed your relationship as well?
Yeah, more in that, like, obviously, like the orgasm part was never really an issue for me, as I don't think it was for you, but it's more the communication side, where before I would have just not said anything, so I maybe was so conscious about pleasing him, and now I'm like, hang on, he wants me to be as happy as I want him to be. It isn't, you know, it's a two-way system, and it's not wrong for us to have that conversation.
And they don't have to be opposing viewpoints. You're sort of aiming for the same thing, It's just we
Absolutely.
didn't know without the communication skills.
Yeah, and it's getting him, who is maybe a little bit prudish about talking about things like that, to feel more open and comfortable with talking about it. And it really helps when I bring in the stats and the science as well. I'm like, well, did you know? It's a really good technique that I've been using.
So basically, we've turned you into a scientist in the bedroom.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
We thought we were great communicators before we even started this. But I think this has shown us that actually we weren't as good as we thought we were, and made us better and more focused, I think. You don't know what you don't know to talk about it. And I think that's what we had, when we were like, oh, something's not quite right, but we don't know exactly what it is to talk about it. Whereas now we're like, oh, that's because of this. So we know, like, for instance, slowing down. I'd never even thought about that as a thing, but it does make a difference, and now we do.
I think focus is the key word, because we've put more focus into some things, but also taken the focus away on other things that maybe are not the primary thing to focus on at that moment, or the thing that needs the most attention.
Yeah.
Both physically and psychologically as well.
We have broader sex now, lots of different types and lots of different things. And we started to become very, like I said, we're sort of very stuck in a rut. And it's definitely better for you to do as many different things as you can. It must be. We have much better pleasure at the end of it.
That's so great to hear.
We're more confident people and happier. I would say healthier, but it's Christmas now, and after Christmas, you've always put on a bit, so not quite healthier. But yeah, we're definitely healthier in sort of emotionally healthier.
Yeah.
And as a couple, I feel more connected from this, and
I think
that can only be positive.
Yeah, it's fair to say that this has been very liberating for all of us and has really changed all of our lives in quite an unexpected way. I don't think any of us expected it to have this kind of outcome that it has. I think it's been really good for us all, and we're hoping that all of our listeners feel the same way, and that it's helped them as well.
Yeah, I hope so. And I think if we could give any piece of advice, it'd be just try something and just keep communicating, and the more you do it, the more benefits you get at the end of it.
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much for listening to our sex short of Sex Is Not That Deep. We've got some guests coming in soon for our next few podcasts, and we're very excited to share that with you. Bye-bye.
Sex. It's not that deep.